Good morning and welcome to World News here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. And we begin this news bulletin with massive anti-government protests that are expected in Serbia, as today marks 1 year since 16 people were killed in a collapse of a railway station canopy in Novi Sad, a tragic event that sparked ongoing anti-government demonstrations. Now, our Balkans correspondent Pavel Chovsky is in Novi Sad, where the biggest demonstration is to be held. Pavel, good morning. What does the situation look like right now? I mean, honestly, it's unbelievably has been already a year since the event took place.
Well, Diana, I am now about 4 kilometers from the Novi Sad railway station, the epicenter of today's protests, and I can already see large crowds of people gathering for today's demonstration. The demonstration that proved to be the biggest challenge for the ruling SNS party and the country's president Alexander Vučić. The city is expected, the second largest city in Serbia, is expected to grind to a halt today as tens of thousands have gathered here for the protests that have been ongoing for a year and over this time managed to unite a large part of the Serbian society. Please listen.
The key thing that we're seeing, and it has to be underscored, that people, students and citizens have been walking for days from practically all Serbian cities to arrive in Novi Sad tomorrow and to be ready for commemoration. And most significantly, a group of students from the Sandžak region of South Serbia, Bosniak Muslim students, have walked more than 400 kilometers over the past 2 weeks to come. And they have been a kind of unifying moment because the Sandžak region was, to put it very simply, didn't feel as part of Serbia. But through these 12 months, there's been a coming together of Serbs and Bosniaks through this protest, and it has really inspired emotions and energies as these students and all other thousands who have walked to Novi Sad.
As I was arriving in Novi Sad yesterday, I actually saw some of these protesters who marched entering the city to join today's protests. The protests that oppose what the protesters believe is state corruption and state capture of the ruling SNS party and the country's president Alexander Vučić, who over the year largely disregarded the protest movement. But yesterday, in his state address, Vučić apologized to the protesters and asked for national unity today. I will now be heading towards the Novi Sad railway station, and Diana, I'm hoping to see you in an hour to report from the heart of the protest today. Back to you.
And we will definitely be keeping our viewers updated with that. Thank you so much, Pavel Chovsky. We'll see you in a bit. Ukrainian special forces have landed in the embattled city of Pokrovsk in eastern Ukraine, aiming to regain control over key supply routes threatened by advancing Russian troops, this according to multiple media reports citing military sources. Now, Reuters reports that elite Ukrainian units were airlifted into Pokrovsk earlier this week by Black Hawk helicopters. The mission, carried out under heavy drone activity, targets areas Russia claims to have captured, crucial for Ukraine logistics and resupply lines. Analysts have described this move as a bold counteroffensive, though footage from the drop zone hasn't yet been verified. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy said the situation around Pokrovsk remains difficult, with some 170,000 Russian troops concentrated on the front. Ukrainian forces are now engaged in street battles to clear the remaining Russian units from the city, much of which remains a contested gray zone. The Pentagon has given President Donald Trump the green light to provide Ukraine with Tomahawk long-range missiles, assessing that it would not impact U.S. stocks. That's according to a CNN report released on Friday. But the final decision lies with the White House.
The Joint Chiefs of Staff announced their assessment of the Tomahawks even before Trump's meeting with Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelenskyy 2 weeks ago. During the meeting, Trump suggested he would not sell these missiles to the Ukrainians because the US needs Tomahawk missiles for its own purposes and transferring them would be a major escalation. Trump suggested he would not sell the missiles the day after speaking with Russian leader Vladimir Putin. The Russian president told Trump that Tomahawks could strike cities such as Moscow and St. Petersburg, which would not significantly change the situation on the battlefield, but would damage the US-Russian relations. CNN sources reported that Trump has not yet made a final decision on these missiles. The administration will prepare plans to make them available to Ukraine if Trump gives the order.
Poles across the country today are marking All Saints' Day, a solemn time of remembrance when families visit cemeteries to honor their loved ones. The November 1st holiday transforms graveyards into seas of candlelight glowing through the autumn night.
Every year on All Saints' Day, Wszystkich Świętych, millions of Poles travel to their hometowns to visit cemeteries. Families clean graves and bring flowers such as chrysanthemums and light votive candles known as znicze, which illuminate the resting places of their relatives for days. The tradition, rooted in Catholic observance but embraced by nearly all Poles, dated back centuries, replacing the ancient pagan feast of Dziady, when the souls of ancestors were believed to return to earth. As dusk falls, cemeteries across Poland glow with millions of flickering lights, creating one of the country's most moving annual sights. Most shops remain closed and traffic slows as families gather to remember those who came before them.
Flights at Berlin-Brandenburg Airport were grounded for nearly 2 hours on Friday evening after unidentified drones entered its airspace. German authorities say the operations have since resumed and an investigation is now underway.
All takeoffs and landings at Berlin-Brandenburg were halted between 8:08 and 9:59 p.m. local time after drones were spotted near the runway. Several flights were diverted to other German airports before normal operations resumed. Airport officials said the threat has passed, but the incident adds to growing concerns over drone activity across Europe. In recent months, unidentified drones have been detected over airports and critical military sites in Germany, Denmark and Norway. Berlin, a key ally of Ukraine, suspects Russia's involvement, though Moscow denies any connection to the incidents.
President Donald Trump said on Friday that Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban had sought an exemption for Hungary from sanctions imposed on Russian oil companies, but the request was denied.
The Hungarian Prime Minister said earlier on Friday that he was hoping for Hungary to be exempted from sanctions imposed on Russian oil giants Rosneft and Lukoil. The sanctions also impose restrictions on those companies' customers. Trump said this would not happen. Earlier, Orban said that during his upcoming visit to Washington, D.C., he would explain to Trump that Hungary, as a landlocked country, is dependent on pipeline systems. Hungary receives more than 80% of its oil from Russia via the Druzhba pipeline, and this proportion has increased in recent years. Though Trump initially leaned towards this explanation, U.S. officials have recently said that they expect Budapest, amongst others, to prepare a plan to move away from Russian raw materials.
Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko accused Poland of breaking off talks on the release of political prisoners and Polish citizens detained in Belarus. Among them is Andrzej Poczobut, journalist and winner of the Sakharov Freedom Prize 2025, who's remained in prison since his second arrest in 2021.
Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko maintains goodwill while blaming the Poles for failing to engage in dialogue.
Well, let's just say we can exchange Poczobut. If the Poles want to do it, we are ready to consider this option. Let's exchange Poczobut. If you want, we are ready to go along with that. But last night the KGB reported to me that Poles retreated from this negotiating position in solidarity with Lithuania.
The Polish Foreign Affairs Ministry emphasized that the release of Polish nationals imprisoned on false charges remains a top priority for Warsaw.
We remain committed to ensuring that Andrzej Poczobut regains his freedom as soon as possible. However, we do not comment on statements made by the Belarusian KGB or Alexander Lukashenko.
On Monday, Lithuania moved to close its border with Belarus indefinitely. The decision follows on from numerous incursions of smuggling balloons from Belarus into Lithuania, which resulted in the closure of the Vilnius airport.
We're saying to Belarus, no hybrid attacks will be tolerated in Lithuania. We will take the harshest measures to stop such attacks.
Following consultations with Lithuania, Warsaw decided to postpone the reopening of 2 border checkpoints until mid-November, though observers insist that allowing some border movement is imperative.
If it's necessary to open in near future also the same points near Grodno, and also to restart trains for people. Another way we will have, and we now have new iron curtain.
Currently, only 2 rail crossings operate, handling freight only. Road crossings began closing in 2021 and again in 2023 after Pokrovsk's sentencing.
Poland's energy heavyweight Orlen has just soared past the nation's biggest bank to claim the top spot on the Warsaw Stock Exchange. After some troubled waters following a change in management, the company is back on track and attracting major attention.
Poland's energy giant Orlen is speeding past its rivals. It has just taken the crown as the most valuable company on the Warsaw Stock Exchange, surpassing even the country's biggest bank, PKO BP. Since the start of the year, its shares have skyrocketed by more than 128%, lifting the company's market value to 117 billion zloty, or roughly $31.8 billion. The growth comes after a series of major mergers and acquisitions that transformed Orlen into an energy powerhouse. In recent years, the company absorbed Energa, Lotos, and gas company PGN&G, significantly expanding its asset base and production capacity.
Yes, there has been a change in strategy. We announced a new strategy at the beginning of the year, and it was very well received by the capital market. But the market was also watching how we would implement it. And beyond just saying what we would do, we actually started doing it. That was the main driver of our growth.
Today, Orlen ranks as the 11th largest oil and gas company in Europe and 112th among all listed firms in the European Union. It surpassed Germany's Bayer in market value. Once considered the largest company in Germany, Bayer now trails behind the Polish champion, marking a symbolic moment for the CET region.
The key tasks for next year are the opening of our offshore wind farm, the first major offshore project, and the 2 CCGT units currently under construction in Grudziądz and Ostrołęka. These are main priorities for the coming year.
The massive wind farm in the Baltic Sea is set to provide 1.2 gigawatts of power, and according to the new strategy, the capacity of clean-burning natural gas-fired power plants within the Orlen Group is set to increase nearly threefold by 2030. With a growing international attention, analysts say Orlen's rise reflects not just corporate success, but also Poland's increasing influence in Europe's energy and financial markets.
Moving on to the world of sports now. In Riyadh, the WTA Finals, the season-ending tournament in women's tennis, kicks off on Saturday. Poland's Iga Świątek will open her campaign at 4 p.m. CET time against Madison Keys of the United States.
Świątek, seeded second, will compete in the so-called Serena Williams group, facing Keys, Amanda Anisimova and Kazakhstan's Elena Rybakina. The world number 1 Aryna Sabalenka leads the Stephanie Graf group alongside Jasmine Paolini, Coco Gauff and Jessica Pegula. The Saudi-hosted event offers a record amount of prize money, up to $5.2 million for an undefeated champion. Świątek will look to avenge her loss to Keys in this year's Australian Open semi-final and add another title after her 2023 WTA Finals triumph. 8 of the world's best will compete for the last major trophy of the season, with the competition concluding on November 8th.
And stay with us here on TVP World for more news and analysis. This was World News. I'm Diana Skye. Thanks for watching.